Hi everyone, thank you for joining today. Today we are going to be talking about memory. Now, memory is one of the most common complaints in people with epilepsy, and it can be due to a whole host of things, from types of medication we're on, it can be due to the types of seizures we have. If you have focal seizures, then your memory difficulties can vary dependent on where in the brain that your seizures take place. If you're like me and you have temporal lobe epilepsy, well, you're probably more likely to experience memory difficulties. And this is unsurprising because our seizures take place in the part of the brain that is responsible for memory processing. And actually, people who experience complex partial seizures can experience memory difficulties long after their seizures are under control. When we talk about medication, we're by no means saying that all medication creates memory difficulties. But there are some kinds of types of medication that slow down the rate in which we process information. So it can lead to some memory difficulties. And if you are listening to this and you're thinking, I do struggle with memory difficulties, then this is a good starting point. Do a bit of research about the medication you're on and start a conversation with your neurologist. Now, memory, broad subject, right? So we're going to break it down to three parts. So we have the attention encoding, we have storage, and we have recall. And we're going to go into this a little bit now. But if you don't want to sit through me blabbering on, then please feel free to use the time stamps to skip forward, because right at the end I am going to share with you a couple of my tips and tricks that I have picked up and I have implemented throughout the 30 years of living with this wonderful condition. So feel free to skip forward or stay tuned. So you may believe that you have difficulties with your memory, but actually what's going on is you're not getting all of the information to begin with. And this is where you might be having difficulties with attention and encoding. So epilepsy can affect the rate at which we process information. And there's a lot of information out there, there's a lot of research that shows that many forms of epilepsy are associated with the impairment of sustaining attention over a long period of time, or the reduction in attention span. It might be the rate at which this information is presented to you that you struggle with, like having to take an address down very quickly, having to take a phone number down very quickly. So if we use the example of a student, as a student, you are required to take in a lot of information that is often presented very quickly. In this situation, that student may find themselves spacing out. And I love this description that I once heard, I think it's quite apt, that said, our funnel for obtaining information is narrower than everybody else's. Difficulty in this stage of memory processing is no accident. In fact, epilepsy directly affects many of the brain structures involved in processing memories. Research has shown that people with epilepsy are more prone to forget things more quickly than other people. And in some situations, it can seem like information comes in one ear and goes straight out the other. This rapid rate of forgetting is thought to be a result of an impairment in the ability in storing or consolidating new information. So sometimes you may feel that the information's there, but you just can't get access to it, particularly if you're put on the spot. But give you a few minutes and eventually it will come to you. When we talk about semantic information, so words and facts and general knowledge, it's the word finding that can be difficult, and this can be due to a disturbance in our language functioning. The main problems caused in language functioning by seizures is word retrieval. So it could be that you find yourself in a situation where it's right in front of you, you're looking at it, but you just can't think of the word, or you can't retrieve the word. So why is this? Well, this could be due to the seizures damaging the area of the brain in which that word is stored, or indeed the communication lines required for transporting that word for the retrieval. So we've just gone through the three main areas we can struggle with our memory, and you're probably thinking, yes, this is all very interesting, but what can I do? Well, now I want to share with you a couple of the things that I've learned along the way that helped me massively at university, and I even saw my grades significantly increase right through to my job today, where I struggle with memory sometimes and what I do to get around it. So when I was at university, number one, let's call these out. The tip number one was Mozart. Mozart was a massive game changer for me, and you've probably heard about Mozart and the studies related to it. When I used to study and I was revising and I was concentrating really hard, I felt like an aura would come on, and honestly it just made it so much harder to focus and to revise. So when I found Mozart and I played it, honestly, it was like a cloud parted and I was getting so much work done. The aura stopped and I felt like could just crack on with the job. So that's tip number one. Listen to Mozart, particularly if you are feeling seisurey, particularly if you're feeling not too well, put on some Mozart. Even actually when I'm going down the street, I listen to Mozart sometimes. If I was feeling the auras, I put Mozart on. It helped me out a treat. So tip number two is I figured out what type of learner I am, and you can do this by taking a VARK test. It's free, it's online, and it's pretty quick. You may have even heard about VARK at school. VARK is essentially an assessment of your learning style, and I personally am a visual learner. That means that I learn from visual aids like diagrams. So I use this method during my studies, and I would read and read and read, and I would highlight and I would take notes. And when I felt that I thoroughly understood a subject, I would get A2 sheets of paper and I would draw lots of diagrams and use different colours as well to help with that. And my room was filled, all the walls, even the ceiling was filled with A2 sheets of paper with all my revision notes on. And I would just walk around my room and I would repeat it and repeat it and repeat it, and I would remember where it was in my room. Honestly, my grades significantly increased after implementing this method, and it's because I was working with my brain. I come to tip number three. In my job today, I am required to attend meetings where I have to take a lot of information on, a lot of information. And that for me can actually be quite stressful. When someone comes at me with lots of information, delivers it at a rapid rate, sometimes I feel the auras come on again. So I take a dictaphone to these meetings, and that for me helps me to just relax, because hey, if I miss something, in the peace and tranquil of my home, I can go back and I can write down the notes, and I've removed the stress from that situation. Stress is a major trigger for me with my epilepsy, so that's a big one. Also, post-it notes. Post-it notes, oh my God, they are the king for me. I notate everything because I know I'll forget. So I have my laptop that has notes, post-it notes all over my laptop, all over my second screen, all over my desk, and they help me massively. My final tip, which I believe is tip number 4, sorry, I've totally lost track. My final tip, and the biggest tip of all, accept the fact that your memory is limited compared to people who do not have epilepsy. Remove the pressure from yourself to function the same as everybody else. This is not a problem, and it doesn't have to create this big disaster in your life. I graduated university with a first-class honours degree, and I honestly put that down to me just accepting that I am not like everybody else. I have a little bit of an obstacle to overcome when it comes to things like studying, and that's fine. I just have to figure out what works for me. So that's my biggest tip that I can give you. Just work with the brain that you've got. Say, for example, you're going to study and you're going to forget 40% of it. Okay, well, how do you work with that 60%? And how can you help recall that information? So these are just a couple of the things I've learned along the way, and I am still learning and I am still dealing with memory difficulties, and that's fine. I hope that this was help to you, and if you've got any comments, please leave them below. If you've got any tips, I would love to hear from you about them. I can't speak anymore. Please leave them in the comments below, and as always, let's share our stories, let's share our tips, and let's help our community.